Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
You're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
From where I stand right now, I see 3 crybabies and Little Boy Blue.
Joe Giammatteo.
You guys know the best way to not get people to change the channel to Nitro? Start the show off with Crush.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on January 27th, 1997. This Raw was recorded at the Montaigne Center in Beaumont, Texas, and features Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. I'd like to start off tonight by once again saying fuck the cock. It keeps forgetting my progress, so I can't just go to continue watching every week like I did before. Like, I have to go through the whole quagmire of the shitty user interface and track down the episode every fucking time now.
As an update, try this next week, because I had the same thing happen where I logged in and all of my continue to watch were gone. But if I, up at the top, switch to live channels and then back to browse, all of a sudden all of my continue to watch stuff came back. So give that a try.
Well, that's incredibly stupid, but I will.
Well, I didn't say it was an elegant solution.
No, it's just the fact that we have to do it at all. I will give it a try and report back. But with that all being said, let's get into the episode here. Bret is sick of getting screwed. Good old Bret Hart. We get a review of that. And so are we, by the way, whenever we hear the news that Vader will be here later, as well as the 3 other superstars entwined in this angle. But we can't spend too much time talking about that. We're going to go now into our first match of the night. Crush defeats, and PG-13 and a couple Nation Stooges, defeats Ahmed Johnson by pinfall in 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Ahmed was out first here, looking the way he should. Knee pads from heel to hip, Speedo, baby oil, all is right in the world. One good thing about Crush, because I thought I could maybe at least deliver that, whenever Crush comes out, apparently he doesn't get PG-13 wrapping for him. That's a privilege reserved just for Farouk. And just for the record, I can't think of PG-13 as anything other than squirrely now. Thank you, Joe. The action starts at the outside and then gets into the ring. On commentary, Jerry Lawler asked us who could resist the heart punch. Such an absurd question. Ahmed was working hard here, yelling and putting energy into what he was doing. Crush, on the other hand, was disgustingly overacting, such as when he was psyching himself up to apply a one-handed chokehold that did nothing. Crush also applied a body scissor to Ahmed that looked like something the jailbird might have learned in the showers at the Pokey. There was some hip gyrations going into that. We broke to commercial with Farouk peeking out through the entryway and come back to more of Crush acting like he's better than he really is. Ahmed's standing missile dropkick to reverse Crush coming down from the top rope actually looked pretty cool. And then Farouk came down while the referee was consoling Crush in the ring, and the referee continued to not notice while Farouk viciously threw Ahmed into the ring steps. God, I loved that spot because it really looked like and felt like Farouk was giving Ahmed a big fuck you right into that steel. And that was enough to significantly weaken Ahmed, while Crush took his time setting up the overly complicated and yet completely underwhelming heart punch, which, according to commentary, nobody gets up from. The nation all celebrate Crush's victory, and the crowd starts to throw garbage at them. Not a ton, but enough that you can see it raining in, which is something that we don't often see at the WWF at this time. It was a neat thing to see because, again, usually the fans just don't give a shit enough to throw garbage in any of these matches, and that's where this segment ends. Overall, I ended up liking this because of the ending, strictly because of the ending. Farouk looked damn good interfering here. He did it well. It was brief. and therefore believable. It got the crowd going, and I'm happy to see a crowd throwing garbage. Joe, what did you think of this first match?
Well, I guess I'll start with the one good thing at the beginning. I did like Ahmed Johnson coming out of the back there, and then he acknowledged the people behind the Raw entrance, which I thought was pretty cool, giving the people in the cheap seats some love. So I thought that was pretty cool. From there, I pretty much mostly hated just about everything about this. Crush is absolutely horrible. Just everything about Crush is bad right now. And here he is kicking off the show. But, I mean, thankfully, Farouk saves the day a little bit. He comes out and throws Ahmed into the ring and gave him the most atomic of all wedgies I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Ahmed had to pick it out to get that, to be able to take that devastating heart punch right to the chin. The other thing that was funny was Crush, like, at the beginning, he was trying to get his hair tie out, and he was having a hard time doing it, and he just fucking freaked out at the beginning. I don't know if you guys noticed that. But
I didn't
that
see
was
that
pretty
part.
hilarious, too. It sounds like Savio Vega is part of the Nation now, according to commentary, so that might add some life here to the Nation of Domination. It'll add some help for Farouk, maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But
yeah, it's something.
Yeah, I mean, this was horrible. Ahmed Johnson already got the upper hand on all of these jabronis at least twice up to this point. So I don't know. I've kind of stopped caring about it, you know?
Yeah.
I like Farouk versus Ahmed, but I'm kind of just, I don't know, kind of over it already.
From the start, when they announced that these were the two competitors starting off Raw, I was pretty worried. Not just about this match, but for this entire Raw. And, thankfully, just to show my hand a little bit, outside of this match, it wasn't too bad. But this one did kind of live up to my worries. At the beginning, they show us some brief footage from Shotgun Saturday Night. And this is the first time I realized this is a different ring that they use. It's smaller, and like the corner posts are made of like a shinier angled metal and not the rounded corners. So it's Shotgun Saturday Night. They're using a different ring, which I don't know, just thought was a little bit different. And mostly because I'm looking for things to talk about. Because Crush, he starts on the outside. It doesn't look impressive at all. They get in the ring. It doesn't look any better. Ahmed's kicking into Crush's kidneys at one point, and Ahmed's not really laying the kicks in, and Crush isn't really selling them. And it just turns into a lot of time waste maneuvers. Towards the end, this maybe was one of the worst moves of the night. Crush attempts to give Ahmed Johnson a backbreaker, and right from the start, Crush is struggling. And it's about a 2.5-inch backbreaker across Crush's knee. It looked really bad. And then the best part of the match is Farouk came down. He comes down, interrupts, and the best looking move of this fight, Farouk gives Johnson no choice but to sell this throw into the stairs as he fucking lights him up into there. So that was by far the highlight of this match. The rest of it was pretty weak.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. This was a weak match, but again, saved by Farouk. Because really, isn't that the bigger part of the story here is we're going to make Farouk look good too. And Joe, I completely agree about Ahmed. I think I might have said it last week or the week before. Ahmed looks good blasting pink-shirted jobbers. And as many different things as Crush is, he's not quite a pink-shirted jobber.
Not quite.
Lacking the pink shirt. Let's move it along here to our next segment, where it really sounded like they were pumping in a pre-recorded crowd chant of "We Want Sean" over the house.
Yeah,
PA.
I thought the same thing. So,
I mean, it was done well, but it was, I don't know, it just sounded a little too generic.
And Vince McMahon basically holding his hand up to his ear, like, "What's that? Do you hear it? Do you hear Santa Claus bells?
Come on, I want to feel it."
Yeah. My first note going into this segment is Vince McMahon audibly had an orgasm announcing Shawn Michaels. And then got in the ring to talk about the boyhood dream coming true with Shawn there. But then the news that on Thursday, Raw Thursday, Shawn will be meeting Sid for a rematch for the title. Shawn gives a great statement here saying that Sid gave Shawn a return match, so Shawn will do the same for Sid. But Shawn plans on holding on to the title by hook or by crook. Shawn keeps going with it, puts over Bret, puts over Stone Cold, puts over The Undertaker, and mentions Vader in the conversation. Vince then calls Bret Hart down to the ring, who comes down in tights and looks like he's ready to go. Bret Hart grabbed the microphone from Vince and lays it down. Bret wants Shawn in a bad way, and he wants Shawn at 100%. Vince interrupts him to keep him from really getting into it, but overall, Bret delivered. Next up, Vince called out The Undertaker, and it becomes a pissing contest about who got screwed harder. Undertaker believing he's been screwed harder, and he thinks it's time that the WWF title should come to the dark side. Stone Cold gets called out next, but he won't get into the ring, so out of nowhere, Jim Ross on the entryway there. Didn't see him sneak up at all. He's there with a microphone to allow Stone Cold to cut his promo. It is great, by the way, as everything Stone Cold's been doing lately has been. Meanwhile, Vader is standing in profile with Paul Bearer right behind Austin there at the top of the entryway. As Austin turns around to exit, he and Vader trade words. And then rather than go to Vader, the fourth man in this scenario, we cut to a 90s cartoony WWF commercial for Western Union.
I'll take it.
Very fitting.
And we come back to go into the next segment without getting any comment from Vader or Paul Bearer at all. Joe, this segment was pretty good, but when they got to completely ignoring any input that Vader may or may not have, I popped. What did you think of it?
Well, I popped a couple times here. The first time was when Shawn was already in the ring with Vince, and Vince introduces Bret Hart, because anytime Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels are in the ring with microphones moving forward, it's going to be fantastic. Vince, like you said, he cut Bret Hart off at one point. He had to defend his boyfriend, Shawn Michaels, for a little bit, which was rather obnoxious.
Leave him alone.
Yeah. Well, what about Sid?
Yeah.
And I really like Bret hammering home that, he wants Shawn at 100% because he feels that he got screwed at WrestleMania, and I guess so do we. And so he wants Shawn at 100%. He doesn't want any kind of shenanigans, and I like that. And then The Undertaker comes out, and I really like the way that Shawn and Bret were acting while The Undertaker was talking.
Yeah.
They looked like they were just being scolded by the man with the most respect in the business, which is basically real life. So I really enjoyed that. And The Undertaker saying to Shawn Michaels that he better give his soul to the Lord was some nice foreshadowing of what Shawn will do later in his life and become a born-again Christian. Yeah. And I love the Jim Ross running out to allow Austin to talk on the ramp. He ran out there with a microphone after Austin started coming down, which was pretty funny. Austin had a pretty good line there saying, "No disqualification is right down my alley." I popped at that. And then, Vader and Paul Bearer just kind of standing there, useless. I wasn't sure what was happening. They were standing right by the Raw letters. And I don't know, Austin turned around. I thought maybe Austin was going to go after Vader, but he didn't.
Yeah, they jawed at each other a little bit.
A little bit. And then we went to the Western Union commercial. So, thank goodness. Nothing from Vader. He just completely got brushed off, as it should be, and he shouldn't even be involved in this at all.
Shawn Michaels came down in his street clothes, so I guess we knew that he wasn't going to be in any action tonight. And Vince informs us that Vince got to live out his boyhood dream of being in the ring with Shawn. I thought that Shawn did a pretty good job with with his promo here. He put everyone over in this conversation. I was kind of surprised by that. I mean, it was nothing spectacular, but I thought pretty good. Bret Hart came down, though, when his music hit and he starts telling Shawn how he wants him at 100%. You knew this was bordering work and real life here, him wanting to take the belt off of Shawn. So that was really great to see, and I thought the Hitman delivered here. The Undertaker, when he comes down, I don't think he did. I thought he did a good job here, but just something didn't feel right and just a little bit weird having someone with the mystique like The Undertaker basically coming down to a conference down in the ring with a few people. Just something felt off and not right about it. But he did do a good job. You know, his mic skills are good. He was, what he said made sense here. He does deserve a shot at the belt, but it just felt a little bit off to me. Stone Cold. This has been an ongoing theme, and we've been talking about it for months now, but there's just nobody that really holds a candle to him on the mic. He, again, just steals the promo show here out of the three guys, or the four guys talking here. I almost wanted to bring Vader in, but we forget about Vader, so that's a good thing. Leave him outside of the conversation, and let's move on. So yeah, a pretty lengthy segment, but a lot of star power, and I thought some decent promos, and good job by all, really.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I want to point out that the three guys that had nothing to do with the Shawn and Sid match, other than just, tangentially related to it, wouldn't put Sid over at all. Shawn's the only one up there that would put Sid over because he's the one that has the match with Sid. But whenever Vince would try prompting them into mentioning Sid in that upcoming match, they just completely ignored him to the point where Vince had to keep interjecting it himself.
Well, what about Sid?
Nobody mentioning Sid here.
Ryan, you're right about The Undertaker. I think he's not able to pull off the I'm sick of getting screwed as well as a Bret Hart. It just doesn't fit his gimmick.
I guess this whole situation doesn't fit his gimmick, though.
Right, that's what I mean.
Coming down and having a powwow with a bunch of people about a match, that's not The Undertaker,
Yeah, they're making him do something that's a little bit outside of the
character.
His character, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. How often in the past have we heard The Undertaker talking about legitimate reasons to want the WWF Championship? I mean, his big stories have always been more about revenge in the supernatural, revenge on mankind, revenge on Yokozuna, all that kind of stuff. It's always been grudge matches and emotion storytelling for him as opposed to a title chase. And now to see him here in a title chase, maybe that's part of his character that they're still trying to iron out. Why would a zombie need a belt to hold up decaying pants? Let's move along now to our next match. The British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, with Owen Hart and Clarence Mason, defeat Doug Furnas with Phil LaFon by pinfall in 7 minutes and 39 seconds. Doug got the jobber treatment here. Out there, and no fanfare, no entrance, no nothing. A brief introduction by Finkel in the background. Owen was looking great in a green Nike tracksuit here, carrying his slammy and tag belt with him. The match starts with the Bulldog and Furnas stuck in holds before turning rope work into an awkward dropkick reversal. And I only mean that in terms of how it looked. It didn't look bad. It just looked like it was awkwardly worked, or maybe awkwardly communicated would be a better way to put it. Things continued on an upward trend through, though. Even though not everything was perfect, the story in the ring was pretty entertaining. Furnas was being aggressive, the Bulldog being defensively smart, until it went outside and the Bulldog dropped the ring stairs onto Furnas while the ref stood and watched. The Bulldog got back in the ring to do a backflip and gloat with that great nip-up thing that he does. But then the word that Ahmed Johnson had found the Nation of Domination's locker room. We got some very Attitude-era backstage video of Ahmed knocking gently on the door with the 2x4 he was carrying, and then kicking the door in. We got a replay of the door splintering. No further update after that, though, at least immediately after that, as the locker room appeared to be empty. Back in the ring, the Bulldog was in control and looking good. Furnas took some time down on the mat while the Bulldog was getting his win back, which moved into a strong style chop contest that the Bulldog won. Davey Boy was looking great in this match. I fucking loved the camera shot of Owen Hart yelling at Phil LaFon, yelling, "Get him back, I hate him. He gives Canada a bad name. He's like my lousy brother Brett. He's a loser. I hate him."
That I popped. As soon as he said, "I hate him."
Even the dicier moments in this match looked great. Furnas tried to hit like a Hurricanrana, I think. that the Bulldog reversed into a power bomb, even though I'm pretty sure it wasn't really planned that way. Owen accidentally hit the Bulldog with the slammy, which didn't affect the outcome of the match as the Bulldog was able to overcome that to get the win and the 3 count. But that led to an altercation after the bell between Owen and Davey. At one point, Owen sets down his slammy award, and the camera catches a close-up of the slammy tipping over with the ring vibrations, which causes Vince to lose his shit. Oh, that's a bad omen. That's a very bad omen. But things get mostly patched up before we move along. Ryan, I loved this match and its aftermath. I thought the Bulldog and Furnas both looked great here. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with you here. Right from the start, I loved that green and white tracksuit that Owen wore to the ring. It was so beautifully 90s. It was an absolute masterpiece, that thing. And then Doug and Bulldog, they start off, it's nothing fancy, but it was a solid match. You know, they warn us about Johnson backstage, and when we cut to that, we see him blast through a door. I was a little disappointed there wasn't a pink jobber on the side of that to help us out. But we did get to hear the King do his best Admiral Akbar as he keeps on screaming out, "It's a trap! It's a trap!" to Johnson about the Nation of Domination. But we do get back to the match, and again, you know, these guys aren't high flyers by any means. They're two big powerhouse guys, but they put together a pretty good match for the fans here. The storytelling in the match was good, right down to the end with Owen accidentally hitting Bulldog, but thankfully I like that it didn't actually affect the outcome of the match, but it did further this storyline along with the Bulldog and Owen kind of drifting apart and having their disagreements. So yeah, I thought a very strong match. Good one to put in the middle here and entertaining all around.
I want to point out how much I really love the focus on and the use of the Slammy Award by Owen Hart. I mean, it's just so silly and funny. It's almost like ahead of its time. Like, that's the kind of shit they do on modern wrestling, like, all the time. But back then, you didn't really see that kind of goofy shit. And it's just, man, it works so well, especially with Owen Hart. But one thing I really don't like about this is that I feel that Furnas and LaFon are officially jobbers and it is over for them.
Yeah. I mean, this match was pretty long. You know, he didn't just get his ass kicked here, so I didn't give him Jobber of the Week, but it's coming close for one of them to grab it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's over because
it's over,
the
Johnny.
The British Bulldog takes a slammy to the dome and does not lose the match. Yeah. I mean, that's pure jobber treatment there. I get what they're doing, you know, with the storytelling with Bulldog and Owen, but man, I didn't care for that win, that type of win there. I feel like we could have had a little bit better out of Furnas and LaFon, especially when we saw them debut at Survivor Series. We all thought, okay, we can probably get a good match with these guys and the Bulldog and Owen. And we got a little taste of that last week, but it's already over. It's already over. Yeah, non-title and then getting this terrible loss. I'm afraid it's over.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that. I've seen some of the future match cards, so good call though on the whole Slammy thing, Joe. Almost, I know we don't talk about modern stuff here, but definite parallels with Owen and the Slammy and MJF in the ring over there in AEW.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, gentlemen, let's take a step back in time. Let's take a look back at Madison Square Garden. This was on Saturday afternoon, and the story there was that in a tag team match with partner Ahmed Johnson against the Nation of Domination, Savio Vega apparently turned on Ahmed, screwing him at the finish to let Farouk get the win. We moved after that to Shotgun Saturday Night at the Webster Hall. There were go-go dancers there on site looking sexy. And a petting zoo interview with Savio Vega, whose screen graphic said having a bad day. And it turns out Savio apparently joins the Nation of Domination, like you mentioned earlier, and then goes and takes it out on Rocky Maivia, who will, strangely enough, end up becoming a Nation of Domination member, but just neat little thing to see there. Ryan, this was a brief segment, but a major takeaway here. This is the official video evidence of Savio Vega joining the Nation of Domination while double-jointed girls dance on poles. What did you think of it?
Well, I'm double-jointed myself.
Can you dance on a pole like that?
Gyrating.
Well, absolutely. You know it. You know, I was excited to see Savio Vega join the Nation here just because it's something I remember him being in the Nation of Domination, so that's exciting. But I did think it was a little bit odd that he clearly turned heel and then he denies it only to confirm it. That was a little bit odd, but whatever. Savio Vega's in the Nation of Domination. I'll take it. That's a win.
Yeah, I agree, but I was just way too distracted by the shitty 90s club music in the background when the Toddster was interviewing Savio. Man, I was just so distracted by everything that was going on there. It was just, like you mentioned, Ryan, with that tracksuit earlier, just, man, the 90s nostalgia there was pretty crazy.
The Toddster, with his heroin chic look that he's got going on now, getting all skinny and shaving his head with the goatee. Gentlemen, let's keep it moving here to our final match of the night. The Godwins, Henry and Phineas with Hillbilly Jim, defeat Vader and Mankind with Paul Bearer by countout in approximately 7 minutes and 38 seconds. The time here is approximate from the first tie-up as we did not get an opening bell. Paul Bearer and Vader still make zero sense to me, and I get, the real reason. This is the last-ditch effort for Vader. That was a really good point that you brought up last week, Joe, but still just, I don't know. Like, the look of Paul Bearer standing next to Mankind, Undertaker, Kane, that all, like, the look of it makes sense, but I don't know. Paul Bearer standing next to Vader, just, it doesn't line up.
Yeah, there's no story behind it.
Right,
like there's, he was with the Undertaker for 6 years, and then he turned and joined Mankind, and then all of a sudden he's just randomly with Vader. It just makes no sense.
Like even the urn, because a big part of the whole Paul Bearer character was carrying the urn around. The urn kind of works with the weirdness of Mankind, but with just not with Vader at all. And then the cartoon starts. Of course, the preteens in the crowd were dancing a hoedown there to celebrate the Godwins coming down to the ring. We got a quick view of a press conference where the WWF announced the signing of Tiger Ali Singh. And now that I've seen this, I remember the person. I still don't remember any of their matches or feuds they might have been in or anything about them.
When Joe brought him up before, I was like, yeah, I remember the name and I kind of remember what he looked like, but I don't remember a single wrestling match he was in.
Yeah. Yeah, that trend continues here. Now that I've seen him, like, okay, yeah, I remember that guy, but I couldn't even tell you what his ring gear looked like or anything, how tall he was. I don't know. We get the news that next week we'll be having Royal Rumble Raw, where in addition to the action, we will get a replay of the Royal Rumble match, if I understood that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, on that. In the match, the action, decent between both Godwins and Mankind, especially the way that Henry was able to manhandle Mankind. That looked great. And part of the reason that things were looking great was that Vader hadn't been in the ring yet. And it becomes apparent that Mankind does not like Vader at all, which just goes to show that everybody has some good taste sometimes. But then Vader gets in the ring, and I gotta admit, he started laying into Phineas in the corner. That very brief 5 seconds was the best Vader has ever looked. At one point, Phineas gets pulled to the outside. Henry comes to his defense. That looked great. Then we broke to commercial for another sponsored slam. Earlier, it was the Western Union Rewind, and this was the Snickers Slam of the week. I don't know what the context here was, but it looked like a basketball player or something. Very 90s. Both of the Godwins were looking great in this match. Mankind right there with them, looking great. And it even kind of seemed like Vader was trying a little bit more just to meet them at their level. It didn't quite work, but it just felt like Vader was putting in a little extra oomph. Henry got put outside with both Vader and Mankind, which started a 10 count. Vader held Henry. Mankind tried to hit Henry with a chair, but Henry dodged it. Mankind hit Vader with the chair instead, and I loved the smile on Mankind's face after putting Vader down. That action drew the count-out victory, causing Paul Bearer to start yelling at Mankind and chewing Mankind out. An interesting twist there. Mankind didn't care at all what Paul Bearer had to say, though. He just seemed very satisfied with the situation. And we got surprise last-minute footage of Ahmed. He ended up finding the Nation of Domination, or at least one member of PG-13, out in the parking lot. He throws that member of PG-13 into the trunk of a car right before it drives away, screeching through the parking lot, and we fade to black. This was also a pretty great match, despite Vader. And in my opinion, the best the Godwins have looked in a long time. They looked like ass kickers throughout this match. Joe, what did you think of this match and the way that Raw ended tonight?
Well, when this match started, I could not help but think of how Mankind is basically getting the Owen Hart treatment now that he got 2 years ago when they put him in a tag team with Yokozuna.
Great call.
You know, it's very similar. It's a guy getting put with someone who was once a huge force in wrestling and just no longer has it. But I'm sure, you know, a guy like Mick Foley or Owen Hart will try and make the best of it, you know. We'll see what happens with that. I really liked the end when, you know, with the chair shot and Mankind almost looked like he was enjoying whacking Vader in the dome with that chair. You know, that's good storytelling there. So that was nice to see. I feel like we hardly see the Godwins anymore. They kind of fell down the ladder a little bit.
I think they're probably a house show favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what happened to people getting slopped? I mean, we don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
What happened to Sunny, too, by the way? I haven't seen her in like weeks. But Henry Godwin, to me, he continues to shine as one of the more underrated wrestlers. He's a really good wrestler for you know, a big guy. You know, when I see guys like him, I think of guys like Diesel, but I think Henry Godwin I don't know, he's just so smooth, moves around so smooth for a big guy, and I just really enjoy watching him. So that was nice to see.
It reminds me of Bam Bam. Like, just here's a big guy that just fucking moves like he's 100 pounds lighter than he.
Fast as hell. He's just fast.
Yeah. And just makes everything look real, too.
Yeah.
You know, there was some brawling outside of the ring that was pretty decent, too, but also a little sloppy. But when Vader's involved, you know, that's what's going to happen. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily hate all of this, but there's just, I don't know. There's just a lot of confusion with this whole Vader, Undertaker, Paul Bearer stuff. Like, I don't know. It's just a little confusing and a little disappointing that we went from that fantastic feud between Mankind and Undertaker for months to this.
I don't disagree with that, but as far as this actual match went, I kind of agree with you, Bartlett. I thought this turned out better than expected for a match that involved Vader.
Yeah.
You know, thankfully, they knew what they were doing here. And Mankind is who starts off with Phineas, and they looked good together. And then Henry comes in, and him and Mankind go at it, and they look good together. And speaking of those two, there's a singles match I'd like to see. Mankind and Henry. Yeah. I don't think we ever saw that, but I think that would be a good, entertaining match with those two. Vader tags himself in, and surprisingly, like you stated, Bartlett, he doesn't look terrible here. Some of the best stuff that we've seen out of Vader in a very long time. I mean, he's in there very briefly, but his punching in the corner and his clothesline, it looked pretty good. Then we go to the outside action, and again, I mean, we're just putting Henry over all night here, but Henry looked great when he rounded that corner like a fucking freight train and just collided and took out Vader and Mankind. That was good stuff. And, you know, Mankind was in the match 90% of the time. That is definitely the Owen Hart treatment with Yoko. Let the person who still has it go out there and wrestle the whole time. But I thought it looked pretty good. And that ending was, I don't know. I liked the way they portrayed Mankind here because, as the King pointed out, Mankind had enough time to stop and not hit Vader with that chair after, was it Henry or Phineas that ducked out of the way?
That was Henry. Henry ducked out of it.
So Henry ducks out of the way, and Mankind clearly has enough time to stop and not hit Vader, but he decides to just wrap him anyway, and then the smile on his face. So I kind of enjoyed that. It continued to show just how deranged this Mankind could be. So yeah, I thought a very strong match. And again, not to show my hand, but surprisingly, Vader isn't going to be my low light tonight. So
Yeah, I had two really big takeaways from this. The first one was not quite as long-term important, but like the music. The Godwins' music was the only thing that kept them from looking like a serious tag team here. If they would have come out to anything other than that cartoony finger-picking banjo shit.
Well, remember, that's not their music.
Well, yeah, they should be coming out to I'm a Country Boy or whatever from Uncle Jim.
Yeah, even that, though, still a little too upbeat. Like, I'm not saying they need to be coming out to, like, Cowboys from Hell or anything, but, you know, if they could just... They looked like such a serious tag team in this match. They looked like they were putting maximum effort in. There wasn't fucking Phineas doing the donkey kicks and needing to be restrained. You know, there wasn't any of the animals, like goats getting thrown into the mix or some shit, or Hillbilly Jim interference. They looked like a serious bruiser tag team here, and God, we're just so close to having it. I don't think we'll ever get it. TL Hopper, I think, becomes their manager eventually, if I remember from his Jobber of the Week.
For like a week.
Yeah.
It's a week too long.
But when he does become their manager, they turn heel at that point. They decide to turn and beat the shit out of Uncle, I don't know what the fuck they call him, Uncle Cletus. There you go. That was it.
Okay.
And so yeah, he's there for like a week or maybe two, and then the Godwins turn heel.
Okay, so upward mobility there, still looking up for the Godwins, beating the shit out of TL Hopper. The other thing that I really wanted to highlight here was, as you both pointed out, you know, Mankind really enjoying smacking Vader with the chair, and then Paul Bearer yelling at Mankind, you know, what's wrong with you? Why did you do that? On their way out.
Well, this motherfucker took my ear.
Ignoring him. Well, yeah. But it's a nice little hint there that there might be trouble in paradise with Paul Bearer and Mankind, because Mankind always was going to be better. Not that I don't like Paul Bearer, but Mankind is a random actor. He's the chaos in the WWF. You know, it's great to have Paul Bearer there as somebody to introduce him to us and to help that heel turn and to really help flesh out Mankind as a character and all those promos and vignettes. But now that we've proven that Mankind can do things, and he can speak and he can wrestle, he doesn't really need a manager. And I mean, you know, Paul Bearer could stand to try to get Vader over a little more, I guess. I don't know. I mean, if that's the whole point of Paul Bearer being with him, then maybe he should just be focusing on Vader.
I agree. Mankind was always going to outgrow Paul Bearer and not need him anymore.
So it was just a nice hint that maybe that's coming soon. And plus, I mean, you know, there are other things for Paul Bearer to be doing that may or may not involve the Undertaker's mother that we'll find out about in the future. But as I said, that's the end of this episode. We faded to black. So let's take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, why don't you go first?
So my highlight is the big elimination 4-way conference that happened, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It was good shit. Everyone involved did a good job. The promos were good. It kept me excited for these storylines. Good shit there. Low light, I mean, it had to be the first match of the night, Johnson versus Crush. It was slow, boring, and exactly what I expected when I heard who was involved in it.
Yeah, we're pretty much in agreement here. I did not love this episode of Raw. I didn't necessarily think it was really bad, but WrestleMania is not far away, and I feel like we're kind of phoning some things in here. But for my highlight, I have to go with the four-way, whatever you want to call it. Even though it's such a convoluted thing that's happening, it's a lot of star power involved, and they had Sean involved there too, which was good. So I liked that a little bit. And then, yeah, my low light is just Crush starting off the show. In a fucking ratings war. I can't believe USA Network didn't just fucking shut the whole thing down after that.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. Crash, starting it off.
It's the Nielsen ratings. Households apparently like jailbirds for some reason. Jailbird. I ended up in a pretty drastically far away place from you, Joe. I thought that there were no highlights, no lowlights. That is my highlight. My highlight is that there were no lowlights in this episode. I thought this was a great episode. The first match was weak, admittedly, but if we stick with just Farouk showed up and it further put over Farouk as a badass coming in to make the save and perpetuate that story. We got to see some great action from like the Bulldog and the Godwins. We usually don't get to see those guys shine, but we got it here. The four-way promo that you guys both mentioned. Just overall, I thought this was a great episode. And I didn't want to look too hard at it to find lowlights. I wanted to just bask in the overall goodness here, so
I would agree. I'm a little bit more in your camp, Bartlett. I thought that this was a fairly strong Raw. I mean, I thought the Johnson Crush match was definitely a low light.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I enjoyed everything past that.
Yeah, and I mean, if I really wanted to, I mean, I suppose if I had to pick a low light, that would probably be it. But really, the whole Farouk thing salvaged that for me, because it was a short match, relatively speaking. Let me just double check. I mean, it was only 5 minutes and 45 seconds. And for that to get to the point of them throwing garbage at Farouk, I mean, that was kind of worth it, in my opinion. Joseph, what kind of contemporary wrestling news do you have from on and around January 27th, 1997?
Well, there's some news about a little bit of a change in format for Monday Night Raw.
Oh.
I think it's no secret. Everybody knows that Monday Night Raw switches to a 2-hour format here very soon. That change in format sounds like it's coming from the USA Network. They are pissed off about constantly losing to Nitro, and they want more live shows at this point. So not only is Raw going to be switching to a 2-hour format, but we're going to see a lot more live shows in the future.
Okay, that makes more sense. The whole live thing. It's the way that you put it was kind of funny. Like, we're tired of losing, so we're going to double the amount of content that is currently losing to the competition.
It's more of a focus on the format.
Yeah.
You look at your competitor, they're live every week. So, they must be doing something right. Let's try that.
Well, and we're have a fairly short episode here. I guess we could bring up that us too are going to change our format just to kind of stay within time parameters. We're going to move closer to our pay-per-view formats for these Raws when they move to 2 hours.
That's pending the approval of Commissioner Gorilla Monsoon.
Of course. Speaking of formats of shows, I'm sure you guys remember the show LiveWire that was being discussed.
Whatever happened to that?
The format of that show was, fans could phone in or email the show, and they would talk about those phone calls or emails, and that entire format has been scrapped. So LiveWire will now be more of a WWF Mania format, where they will just show and talk mainly about clips from Monday Night Raw.
And that's what I remember from LiveWire being mostly.
Yeah, and Dave Meltzer seems to think that it's just because if they're switching to a live format for Raw, it's going to just be too much live TV that they have to run. They would have to run LiveWire, Shotgun Saturday Night, and Monday Night Raw all live, and that just seems to be a little too much. Speaking of Dave Meltzer, he also believes that the rift between Owen Hart and British Bulldog is to eventually turn the British Bulldog babyface and give him a big push. A push. So we'll see about that. Dave Meltzer reports that Sid missed some TV tapings due to a family emergency. We were told on the air that it was due to a concussion, but seems to maybe be a family emergency for Sid, but he'll be back soon. Like you mentioned, Bartlett, earlier, the Raw on February 3rd, which is our next show, will apparently air the Rumble match, and then it will have clips of a January 31st Toronto Skydome show. So it'll be a little bit of a different format for Raw next week. And I mentioned Sunny earlier. Where the hell has she been? Even though she has not been on our TV screens, Dave Meltzer is reporting that she is the most downloaded celebrity on AOL still. Having surpassed names such as Terry Hatcher and Elle McPherson.
Oh, there's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
So there you go. And that is all this week.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW, just at gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at Royal Rumble Raw. Royal Rumble Raw aired on February 3rd, 1997, and was the first 2-hour episode of Monday Night Raw in what would go on to become their new format. This is going to feature matches with Flash Funk, Gold Dust, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.